Okay, Trevor, you want to come on up here, my friend? Trevor's been here, oh, this must be about the 4th time. He's spoken to our group. This man is so loved and adored wherever he goes. He's so exciting, and he gets people riled. And so, you know that he. How many people here know that? How long did you spend with Glenn Beck? Teaching him everything he knows.
I wouldn't take quite that much credit, but
Please.
This is a lot of my material.
Yes, he does. And so, anyway, we're so glad to have him back today. He drove over from the west coast of Florida, right, Trevor? Drove over from the west coast?
From Bradenton.
Okay, so he came over from the west coast of Florida, to be here with us today, because he likes us too. So please welcome Trevor Loudon.
Thanks very much, Jack and Danita, and thanks very much, Mallory, for that great speech. I was fascinated by what you said about that meeting of the Foundation for Now. I've studied a lot about the left, but it's that was really
Get up really close to the...
Okay, sorry. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you understand a real southern accent?
Yeah.
Okay.
Texas.
Yeah. The story about Texas.
Texas. Well, I didn't know I had an accent until I was talking to Brandon Darby one day from Austin. And I said, look, I'll come down to see you in Austin one day. I've never been to Texas. He said, where's Texas? Where's this Texas place? Because I have eggs for breakfast. I oppose the devil. So I didn't know until that moment. But now I do. But Reagan said, and unlike Mallory, I will start with a funny story, because it's always good to lighten the mood. I was over in Los Angeles, and I went up to a street vendor and I bought some food. And the guy said to me, you've got an accent, where are you from? I said, I'm from New Zealand. He said, where's that? And I said, well, it's down by Australia. He said, where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from. So that's common core geography for you people.
Medical marijuana did that.
Miracle man. This guy's a businessman, he probably votes. Yeah, I'm sure. But look, he should be with us. He should be. But look, as I'll get into it, everybody always says, and you would have heard some of these lines before, but I think it's worth repeating. Everybody always says to me, why do I care about the United States? I've been 4 years on the road, touring all over your country. Why do I care about America? I say there are 2 reasons. The first is gratitude. My country was saved in World War II from invasion by the Japanese by the massive sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. And that's a very strong meaning. The second reason is related, but it's a bit more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If freedom should fail in the United States, if you lose your constitution, your liberty, your economic dynamism, and your military superiority, all of which are in grave danger, the bad guys of this planet, I'm talking Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, North Korea, and their Islamic allies, and they are allies, people.
Yes, they are.
They are all allies against Israel and the United States. They will carve up this planet amongst themselves. And you see that unfolding today. And you think if you're an ally of America, Israel or Germany or Britain, Canada, South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Australia, you're freaking out right now because you see that the president of this country loves the bad guys a lot more than he loves the good guys. Think about this. Your allies are looking at you and wondering, is it worth being America's friend? one of the first acts of office your president did was to cancel the missile shield that was supposed to protect the Czech Republic and Poland from the Russians. Then they saw him abandon Georgia to the Russians. Then when there was a genuine rebellion in Iran against the mullahs, Obama did nothing and thousands died. And then when the Muslim Brotherhood and the Communist Party of Egypt took out America's ally Mubarak, Obama cheered them on. And now they're looking at the Ukraine, folks. And you need to remember what Napoleon said about the Ukraine. Whoever controls the Ukraine controls Europe. Whoever controls Europe controls the world. These are big stakes we are playing for here, people. And if we let Putin get away with this, we're going to face him down the road a hell of a lot stronger. You know, the Ukraine has a treaty signed in your Senate under Bill Clinton, guaranteeing that country American protection from Russian military aggression. They gave up their nuclear arsenal in exchange for an American promise. And now that they need it, folks, where is it? So far, Obama has sent them a few $100 million of non-lethal aid and John Kerry. I bet they laugh too. Think about it, people. Who is John Kerry? He's basically Jane Fonda with less testosterone. But to be fair to Mr. Obama, he did put some sanctions on. We've got to be balanced, you know. He did put some sanctions on some rich Russians to terrify Mr. Putin into submission. I saw a pro-Putin rally in downtown Moscow not long ago. A woman held up a sign that really exemplified what they think of this country. The sign said, "Your pornography is harder than your sanctions." Which is true. So this is not about a depression, folks. You're Americans and you'll fight your way out of a depression. This is not even about losing some of your rights, because you're Americans and you'll stand up and take them back. But have you ever been in a position before where your commander-in-chief is alienating your allies, empowering your enemies, and gutting your military?
Treason.
What is the inevitable consequence, people? Obama has abandoned Reagan's doctrine of peace through strength. What happens to your peace when you lose your strength, folks? Do you think Putin would be trying to re-establish the old empire? Do you think China would be threatening the Philippines and Japan? Do you think Iran would be threatening the Middle East? Do you think ISIS would be committing unimaginable atrocities in Syria and Iraq if you had a Reagan in the White House today?
No.
But thousands of people are dying every day, folks. Christianity is being obliterated in the Middle East because this country has twice elected an anti-American president. And I want to say something, because I think the evangelical Christians in this country bear a big responsibility here. Before World War II, the German churches could have stopped Hitler. They had the strength and the moral authority to do so. Yet they chose to have a hands-off, let's get out of politics, let's just be nice to the Nazis policy. And 6 million Jews died, hundreds of thousands of your boys died, and the world was plunged into war because of their negligence and cowardice.
Amen.
In the last election, the evangelical Christians refused to vote for a Mormon. They could have gotten rid of Obama for us. They could have, but they didn't. Do you think thousands of Christians would be dying in the Middle East today if Mitt Romney was now in the White House?
Never.
How many of those American Christians do you think understand the responsibility they bear for the slaughter that's happening today in the Middle East and Africa? How many of them you think make the connection? But the connection is there, people. So, you know, you have a president who wants to reduce your army back to pre-World War I levels, your navy back to pre-World War II levels. He's purging generals he doesn't like. He's driving thousands of good officers out of the military with their gay policies, women in combat, and rock-bottom morale. He's cancelling weapon systems right, left and centre, blowing off military contractors with millions of years of experience in their ranks. And he wants to cut your nuclear arsenal down to 265 nukes and then down to 0.
Right.
The Russians alone have more than 14,000 of them, people. But they would never threaten you with them, would they?
No.
Because Hillary's made them your friend now.
Reset.
People, this is about the physical survival of your country.
Revolutions!
This is not just a game anymore. This is the survival of your country. And if your country goes down, every single Western country follows. Every one. You know, people say Obama's stupid. He doesn't understand foreign policy. He's out of his depth. If he was just stupid, would he not make some mistakes in your favour once in a while? No, I think the most significant thing Obama said in his entire first term, and you've got to realise Obama was mentored by pro-Soviet Marxists. Frank Marshall Davis in Hawaii, you know, almost certainly a Soviet agent. Alice Palmer in Chicago, the woman who got him his first job in politics, definitely a Soviet agent. They were both members of the peace movement. The peace movement has always been run by communists. Its role has been to alienate you from your allies and gut your military. What do you think Frank Marshall Davis and Alice Palmer would think of the job that Obama has done on your military, people?
Excellent.
They'd be pretty darn proud, would they not? I think the most significant thing Obama said in his entire first term of office, when he was caught off mic in South Korea with then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, thought no one was listening. Yes, Mr. Medvedev, when I get re-elected, I'll have more flexibility to deal with you. Yes, said Medvedev, I understand. I will pass your message on to Vladimir. We are with you. How much more of a warning do you need, guys? This is not stupidity, this is malice. Deep, deep hatred of this country. Now my books, I've only got one of my books here today. It's you probably most of you already seen it. It's The Enemies Within, Communists, Socialists and Progressives in the US Congress. And it is exactly what it says, folks. It's a directory of the Marxists in your Congress and the damage they are doing. Now, you know, people say, look, there are no Marxists in America now. The Communist Party's long gone. You know, there's 13 or 14 of them. Well, we know what 13 people can do. But what I'm saying is this. The big secret, the book is really about the two big secrets of modern communism. The first secret, I think they borrowed from the devil. Because we all know, or the devil, I should say. Because we all know that the cleverest thing the devil ever did was to convince people he doesn't exist.
Right.
And what have the communists been telling you in the last 20 years, folks? Pretty much the same message, have they not? Not surprising, they come from the same cloth.
Right.
So, the second big secret of modern communism, and Mallory has touched on this, it is the ability of a tiny Marxist party, maybe a few hundred comrades strong. It is their ability to influence and even control the legislative process in this country. In other words, to write the laws. So what I'm saying is, less than 20,000 card-carrying communists in this country are right now writing the laws that control the lives of more than 300 million Americans. Right now. Now the mechanism, one of the main mechanisms they use, not the only but one of the main, is control of organised labour. Now you were very lucky in America for a long time because your AFL-CIO was run by hardcore anti-communists like Lane Kirkland and George Meany. But in 1995, folks, everything changed. That was the year that your largest Marxist group, Democratic Socialists of America, Gloria Steinem is one of them, that was the year they took over the AFL-CIO. They kicked out Lane Kirkland, they put their member John Sweeney in as president, and now their protege Richard Trumka runs it for them. They took over every major labour union in the country, and from that vantage point they mounted a purge inside the Democratic Party. Because the Democrats are nothing without the unions, folks. That's where their money comes from and their guidance comes from. So they got rid of the Southern Dixiecrats, the Southern Conservatives, the moderates. Joe Lieberman, the senator from Connecticut, was one of the last ones to go because he was far too pro-Israel. They purged the party of those they did not like, and now they run that party. So 20,000 Marxists run the unions run the Democratic Party. That is why the Democrats have gone so far to the left. That is why they're pushing all this crazy stuff, because they're taking policy direction from the communists. Do you think Harry Truman or JFK could get a seat in today's Democratic Party?
No.
They would be in the Tea Party, folks. Most of them.
Yeah.
And you got these poor, loyal Democrats who do not understand what has happened to their party. They really have no clue. Now, so the process is very simple. The Marxists set a policy. This is what we want for America. It might be socialisation of student loans, green jobs, cap and trade, card check, normalisation of relations with Cuba, which they just got. It might be a New START treaty with Russia, a ban on fracking, whatever they want, communist policy, union policy, Democrat policy.
I hate Republicans.
Well, I'll get to them, man. I don't hate all of them. Yeah, I'll get to that. But I want to talk about one policy that I think is the single most dangerous one right now. And most people have no understanding of the implications of it. That is comprehensive immigration reform, otherwise known as amnesty. Now you have Republicans, and I put that in inverted commas, like Marco Rubio, and, well, he's backed away from it, but, you know, the greaseball from South Carolina, what's his name? Lindsey Graham, John McCain. They will tell you that amnesty will be good for the GOP. Because if you give 8 or 10 or 12 or 20 million illegals citizenship and voting rights, they're all going to be so grateful they'll all become staunch Republicans, right? Look, we know that the illegals, who are mainly Latinos, not exclusively, tend to be very socially conservative and often very good Christian people. But they vote overwhelmingly Democrat. Overwhelmingly, 80% Democrat, at least. Now maybe they will change in 15 or 20 years, maybe. But I think we've got 18 months to save this country, folks. We've got until 2016. They ain't going to change in big numbers in that time. So why do these Republicans tell you this garbage, folks? Is it in any way connected to the fact that the US Chamber of Commerce has spent more than $1.7 billion promoting amnesty in the last 10 years? What do you think the Chamber wants out of it, people?
Cheap labor.
Cheap labour, second-class citizens. And now here's a point. They want the profits of cheap labour. And I believe in profit. I believe in business. But here's a proposition. If you make a profit and you're an ethical business person, should you not also pay your own costs?
Yes.
So what are the costs of amnesty, people? It is a massive endangerment of your national security. It's a huge drain on your economy. It is a massive it is a massive destruction. It is a massive destruction of the respect for the rule of law in your land. Those are big costs, people. Who's going to pay those costs? You are paying those costs, people. The chamber takes the profit and the people pay the costs. Is that ethical business?
No.
But the real driver of this is the hard left. Like most of the destructive things in our society, it started with the communist movement back in Los Angeles in 1950s with a man called Bert Corona, a hardcore communist. He was a Stalinist. He was also a Democrat. He set up the Viva Kennedy clubs in the early 60s, the first organised effort to bring Latinos into the Democratic Party. He also set up a whole network through the southern states, mainly on Saul Alinsky Industrial Areas Foundation money, of a whole bunch of support groups for illegals. These groups, their purpose was to encourage illegals across the border, get them work in factories and farms, get them citizenship and voting. The voting was the goal. Now, Corona trained a whole bunch of acolytes or henchmen to carry on his work. 3 of them are very prominent today in Southern California, and they have transformed that state. The first one is Antonio Villagrosa, until recently the mayor of Los Angeles. A hardcore Marxist. He used to go down to Cuba to cut sugarcane for the Castro brothers. He turned Los Angeles into a sanctuary city. He forbade the LAPD from enforcing immigration laws, and the illegals flooded in the hundreds of thousands. Changed the entire demographics of the state. Second member of this group, a Communist Party supporter named Gil Cedillo, until recently the Democratic head of the California State Senate. Big-time amnesty activist. He is the man who got the DREAM Act pushed through in California about 3 years ago, which gave all sorts of so-called rights to the children of what they call undocumented workers. Third member of this group, a hardcore Marxist named Maria Elena Durazzo, the head until recently of the California AFL-CIO. She is behind the massive union-driven and union-paid-for Latino voter registration drives and get-out-the-vote efforts that have added hundreds of thousands of new Latino voters to the California rolls in the last 15 years, almost all of them Democrats. The result of this deliberate Marxist program, led by 3 people, has been to turn California from a reddish-purplish state to solidly blue. Now all of the Electoral College votes are from California, very important in a presidential election, go straight to the Democrats. Not even a contest. All engineered by 3 Marxists, folks. Now, the leader of the movement today is a man called Eliseo Medina. You've seen him on TV wearing a purple shirt, leading an amnesty rally. He is the man, he was until recently the Executive Vice President of the SEIU Union. He's a member of Democratic Socialists of America. He supports the Communist Party, and he served on Obama's Latino Advisory Committee with several other Marxists. He is the man who got the amnesty bill pushed through your Senate about 3 years ago. Then he worked with Luis Gutierrez, the Democratic rep from Illinois, to get a bill through the House. That failed because of you people. Gutierrez, incidentally, is a former member of the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, a pro-Cuban Marxist-Leninist outfit. When the effort failed to get it through the House, Medina went straight to the President and demanded executive amnesty, which Obama granted. Very risky move, folks, and I'll explain why he did it. But here's a little question for the group. Not trying to persecute anybody, But any former or current union members here today? Few of you? Okay. Well, here, cast your minds back, people. 25 years ago, which organisation in this country was leading the charge against illegal immigration? Against? The unions. AFL-CIO, Cesar Chavez and the farm workers. They had people on the border, folks. They were constantly lobbying Congress to increase penalties on any employer caught employing illegals. Because it was unfair competition, right? Illegals cost jobs, they lowered wages and conditions. They could get rid of American workers and employ illegals for half the cost. So in 2015, which organisation is leading the charge to legalise the illegals? Same people. So why were illegals bad for union workers 25 years ago, but now they are promoting them?
Because they ripped off Americans enough.
Well, it's a bit more than that, sir, but I'll get to that. Well, part of the answer is this. Before 1995, the unions were there to represent the interests of their members. After 1995, when they were taken over by Democratic Socialists of America and the Communist Party USA, their agenda changed to promoting Marxist revolution. The illegals are real bad for union workers, folks. They do cost wages, they do cost jobs, but they are great for the revolution. The unions are selling out their members' jobs every day, taking their money and selling their jobs down the river because the revolution comes first, folks.
Right.
And it is not easy to get union members to vote 100% against their own interests. It took the Marxist Eliseo Medina 5 years of arm twisting inside the AFL-CIO to get them to flip their policy from anti-illegal to pro-illegal, which he achieved at their national convention in Louisiana in the year 2000. The Marxists did it, folks. But the real question is this: why does he want this? And why did Obama grant executive amnesty knowing that it would almost certainly cost him the Senate? Why would he do that, folks? Well, Medina let the cat out of the bag at a big progressive conference in Washington, D.C. in 2009. I've got him on tape, and I quote him in my book saying this. He got up in front of the comrades and said this: passing amnesty is giving citizenship and voting rights to our 11 million undocumented workers is the #1 priority of the progressive movement. Not Obamacare, amnesty. And did he talk about compassion, reuniting families, giving immigrants a break? Not a single word, folks. All he said was this: in 2008, Latinos voted overwhelmingly for Obama and progressive candidates. If we give these people citizenship and voting rights, they will stand with our movement. That will give us at least 8 million more Democratic Party votes. That will give us a governing majority, not just for the next few election cycles, but for the foreseeable future. In other words, forever. Think about it, people. Mitt Romney lost by 2.5 million votes. 8 million Democratic Party votes, people, just for starters. The first thing that will happen is that Texas will go blue. And if you take the Electoral College votes from Texas, your second most populous state, add them to the Electoral College votes of California, your most populous state, which they already got through illegal immigration, do the math, people, add them up. It makes it practically impossible for the Republicans or any other Conservative party to ever elect another president. Ever. And if you think that Democrats are arrogant now, what do you think they'll be like with 8 million more votes in their pockets and the GOP permanently out of office? Would it just be the IRS they send after you? Would this country become like France or Germany as some naive conservatives are still trying to tell you? Or would it become like Venezuela pretty quickly and Cuba not long after? Because that is the plan, people. That is why they are doing this. You've got to remember, Obama is a Leninist. 1 step backwards, 2 steps forwards. He lost the Senate. He didn't care because he knew that amnesty was the road to the one-party state. The one-party state controlled by the Democrats, the unions, and the communists. That is the plan. And you have Republicans telling you this is good for the GOP. These are not stupid people telling you this. They can add up numbers. I bet you they know exactly the totals of the checks they got from the Chamber of Commerce. Yet they still want to give the Democrats 8 million free votes with no plan to counter it. What do you call people who sell out their own party and their own country for a bit of campaign cash, folks?
Traitors.
Yeah, well, that's putting it mildly. Now, the other thing my book is about, folks, is the individuals. Because you've got to know your enemy. You've got to know your enemy, folks. This book is about the individuals involved and what they're doing. It profiles 51 members of the House and 14 senators, and the next edition will have probably 20 more. Now, here's a question for the group. Anybody here, not counting military, ever applied for a federal government job who is willing to admit it?
I did.
You did, ma'am. What kind of job was it?
I work for the U.S. Bureau of Prisons.
Did you need a security clearance for that?
Actually, I had a 10-year security clearance, an FBI security clearance, and I know many of the people that Obama has in his administration never had any security clearance at all because I went through it.
Well, I'm getting to that, okay? Let's make a good point. Okay, so is it most government jobs, even low level, require an FBI security check?
One thing, she raised her hand there because she was in the military.
Right, so you would have got clearances through the military. Oh. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure what you're talking about, Jack.
She was just saying because I'm saying back there, Buddy was in the military.
Okay.
Stand up.
Yeah, okay. Well, the point I'm getting at
Sorry,
is...
Trevor.
No worries. The point I'm getting at is the FBI can go through your underwear drawers, folks. They check out your family background, overseas travel, education, dodgy relatives you might have. I had a friend who applied for a federal government job in DC about 2 years ago. The FBI sent 2 agents all the way to Canada to interview this man's communist uncle. On the strength of that interview, my friend, a staunch conservative, was denied that position. And I'll tell you straight, folks, I support that. Because this is the federal government we're talking about here. This is the heart of the free world. And this country has enemies who will use your weak or dishonest to betray you. And that could cost your whole country. It could cost millions of lives. Treachery is far worse than an enemy at the gates, people. That's why they have security checks on federal employees. But what if you're a young Marxist radical who hangs around with the Communist Party and they control the local unions or the local Democratic Party? Someone like Alan Grayson or Corinne Brown or Eddie Bernice Johnson or Sheila Jackson Lee or Jan Schakowsky or Danny Davis or Jerry Nadler or Patty Murray or Nancy Pelosi or Barbara Boxer or Barbara Lee. Someone who hangs around with the communists, and those unions, well, she's not in Congress, those unions can get you elected to your Congress posing as a Democrat or even to your Senate, where you may serve on the Homeland Security Committee, the Science and Technology Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Judiciary Committee, even the Intelligence Committee, folks. And if you think that's far-fetched, Nancy Pelosi just put Andre Carson from Indiana onto the Intelligence Committee to oversee all 16 of your intelligence organizations, a man with known Marxist and Muslim Brotherhood ties, people. What do you think that does to the confidence of your allies and the security of their secrets, folks? You can get any information you want. You can influence public policy, your foreign policy, in directions favourable to your enemies. How much of an FBI security check does that one take, folks? Virtually nothing. Well, clearly nothing effective. Nothing, people. You're in the post office, you need one. You're in Congress and you don't. You've got this the most powerful legislators in the Western world with access to all sorts of government secrets, no security checks. Now, if you're a foreign intelligence officer serving in the United Nations, which has hundreds of them, from Iran and Cuba and Venezuela and Russia and China, and you have networks and spies and supporters in the communist parties and the labour movement of this country, and some of those groups have the ability to get their people elected into your Congress posing as Democrats, or even your Senate, where they can feed back information or steer your foreign policy in the direction they want. Do you think those foreign intelligence officers are so stupid and lazy they do not exploit that massive hole in your national security? Seriously? People, if they don't do their job right, they might not go home to a fat pension. They might go home to the gulag. You've got the most powerful legislators in the world, no security checks, sitting ducks, many of them affiliated to communist and Marxist and Muslim groups, and nobody does anything about it. But I'll get to the Republicans. Okay, so I'll give you a little example. You've got members of the Congressional Black Caucus going down, about 40 of them, go down to Cuba on a regular basis. Barbara Lee's been down there 7 times in the last 10 years. I've got Fidel Castro, Raul Castro, I quote him in my book, boasting in the Cuban Communist Party newspaper how these members of your Congressional Black Caucus talk to him on a regular basis how they're going to work inside your Congress to ease trade and travel restrictions on Cuba. Right? So that basically, which they've just done, so basically the Cubans can send more spies and more terrorists and more instigators to your country. Who do you think was stirring up the occupying movement, people? Who do you think is stirring up the Ferguson people and the Baltimore rioters? And now the Cubans are going to be able to do it even more easily. What do you call people who go from your country to an enemy country to help them against you? Traitors. And what is the penalty for that one, people?
Death.
So why is it happening every single day and nobody says a damn thing? It's the old saying, isn't it? Why doth treason never prosper? Because when treason prospers, none dare call it treason. It is so endemic, nobody dares to call it out. And it's been going on for a while too. Tell me, question, any Vietnam veterans in the room today? One. Well, I want to say thank you. Please bear with me on a couple of questions. One of them is pretty dumb, but you have to ask it. Was the Vietnam War lost in the jungles of Vietnam?
No.
It was won.
Okay, well we'll get to that. We've got to go through the process. Is it true that your troops on the ground had some very tough rules of engagement? Couldn't return fire without asking permission, couldn't bomb certain areas, couldn't chase the enemy across borders, weren't allowed to hold territory, had to withdraw and allow the enemy to re-infiltrate? Is any of that true?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's a really dumb question. Did those rules of engagement hamper your ability to win that war.
No.
Yeah.
No, but it was the Congress.
Yeah.
The UN.
Yeah, okay, so had you been allowed to fight that war as you were in World War II, to take the fight to the heart of the enemy and fight to win, could you have won it and won it pretty darn quickly? Well, this is the story I get all the time. We could have won it, we weren't allowed to win it. So this is what I say, people. You lost 58,000 of your men in that war. Your brothers, your cousins, your classmates. I guarantee every person in this room was touched in some way by that war. 58,000 men, hundreds of thousands of wounded, millions of Vietnamese who suffered death, imprisonment, impoverishment after the communist victory. This is what I say. That war was deliberately sabotaged in your Congress by Democrats, including Father Drinan from Massachusetts, who are working hand in glove with the Communist Party USA, which was taking its orders directly from the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which was allied to the Communist Party of North Vietnam. You think there might have been a little bit of treason going on there, people? I'm just getting, you're always getting ahead of me. I was just going to say, yeah, well, okay, so you lost, that war was betrayed in your Congress, right? Give me a chance, man. You don't make me lose my train of thought. How many of those congressmen who sold out your country, condemned tens of thousands of Americans to completely unnecessary deaths, how many of them paid a single penalty for what they did, folks?
None.
One of them is now Secretary of State. And John Conyers is still in Congress, people. How long's he been there now? 140, 150 years? But the point about John Conyers is very important. One of your most, bit of a buffoon, people say, one of your most senior congressmen, headed the most powerful committee in your Congress for years, the Judiciary Committee, the body that writes federal law. He still serves on it. It is also the body that oversees the Federal Bureau of Investigation and sets its budget. Which organisation is supposed to be rooting out communists and Muslim Brotherhood and traitors from your government, folks? The FBI. So John Conyers has got a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA. 40 years with Democratic Socialists of America, has been a card-carrying member of that group. 20 years with the Workers' World Party, which supports North Korea, Iran, Cuba and Zimbabwe. John Conyers is a hardcore anti-American Marxist-Leninist. As hardcore as you can get, folks. He hates everything this country stands for, yet he was the man in charge of the FBI's budget. What do you think's going to happen to the FBI's budget if they ever come after John Conyers or his many communist friends in your Congress, folks?
Shut down.
You think they're going to bite the hand that feeds them? So this is the problem. You're a communist posing as a Democrat. You get elected to Congress, no security checks. Once you're there, you can do as you damn well like, because the FBI doesn't dare to touch you. Could that be an issue, folks? Yeah. You have got at least 100 members of your House and 20 members of your Senate who would not pass an FBI security check to clean the toilets at any military base in your country. And neither would your president. Can you see why you're in the mess you're in, people? Deliberate treason and infiltration of your Congress and your Senate. The communists are writing your laws, people, right now to the benefit of themselves and your Muslim adversaries. But I don't want to depress you people with any of that, or bring you down in any way. You didn't come here for that, did you? You come here for hope and change. Okay, well this is, look, people, this is my view. If I thought there was no hope for America, I'd be back in my beautiful New Zealand right now, building bunkers and stocking up on baked beans. And I'm not mocking prepping at all. We should all be doing it. This is how I see it. In 2008, the left thought they had a slam dunk. They had the House, they had the Senate, and they had their man in the White House. 40 years of hard work by those 60s radicals, those Bill Ayerses and Bernardine Dawns, through the Democratic Party, through the unions, through the media, through the universities. 40 years, and finally they had their ducks in a row. And they were going to take you down, people. They had their agenda all written out, and they were going to take down the great Satan. But in 2009, 2010, something miraculous happened. And I do not use that word lightly, folks. What do you think it might have been? You guys. Where had you been hiding, people? I didn't see you coming. The left didn't see you coming. But you came out of nowhere and you blogged and you marched and you emailed and you rallied and you agitated and you phone banged and you put a heck of a lot of much needed spine into the GOP, and you took back the House in 2010, folks. There's one person in this country who doesn't know that, and that's Karl Rove.
Yeah.
It was you. You guys did it. In 2008, Obama could walk on water. He was practically the second coming. Yet 2 years later, thanks to you and Glenn Beck, he loses the House in a landslide. And that brought the agenda of the left to a grinding, screeching halt. They had it in the bag, people. They were breaking out the vodka. Who was going to stop them? John Boehner? They had it, and a bunch of amateurs and novices came out of nowhere and took their toys away. And some of you guys wonder why you get called dirty names. Why do they hate us? What have we ever done to them? Only destroyed 40 years of hard work, people. You think about this. The Tea Party movement doesn't get a lot of thanks. Quite a lot of the opposite. But I'm here to say thank you. Because had you not done what you did, this country would have been done. You saved America. Because had you not done it, they would have had their entire agenda through in 2 years. They would have got Obamacare straight through, straight to single payer. They would have got card check, cap and trade, green jobs. They would have had 10, 20, 30 million illegals voting in 2012 and 2014, folks.
That's right.
Where would you be then?
We're not out of the woods.
You're not out of the woods, but you gave your country time, folks.
Yay!
And I'm here to say thank you. I'm here to say thank you, because without you, this country would be done, and so would mine. Thank you. Now, I'm going to do something now that's normally considered very, very rude. But I'm a Kiwi and I can go home, right? Okay? Because you don't go to someone else's country and tell them how to do things, do you? It's just not kosher. But I get asked all the time, people. I've travelled all over this country now, Tea Party groups everywhere. I've been to 43 of the 57 states now. Wake up, folks. That's my test for Democrat infiltrators. If they don't laugh, it's probably a Democrat. People, I get asked the same questions. Are we making a difference? Should we work with the GOP? Should we form a third party? Should we just play more golf and forget about all this politics stuff? Well, my only value to you folks is as an outside observer, because sometimes you can see your neighbour's situation more clearly than they can see their own. So this is where I see you are now and how you can get out of it. The first thing I'll say is, given the time you have left, stopping the Democrats. A third party's out of the question now. There's no time. No time. There's only one political force that can stop the Democrats in the next election, and that is the GOP. But the real question is this: what will the character of that GOP be? Because if the old guard, the Karl Roves and etc. have their way, and they give you a candidate like Jeb, Common Core is wonderful, illegal immigration is an act of love, Bush, you're done, folks. Because the Tea Party will bolt, the Republicans will stay home in disgust. Nobody likes them, people. Look, I was in New Hampshire. All the Republican candidates are there, saying what they had to say. I saw a man with a big badge, big thing of badges, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, blah, blah, blah. I said, how are those Jeb Bush badges selling? He said, I haven't sold any. I said, I even went to his meeting with his supporters, and even they wouldn't buy them. He is a guaranteed loser. But if you have someone different, someone who loves the Constitution and is willing to put up his fists against the establishment for this country, someone like Ted Cruz, for instance, things could be very, very different. But how do you get there? I want to go back in history now, because I think this illustrates where you are now and gives pointers on what to do. Back in 1976, this country had been losing its liberties, Republican, Democrat, for decades. Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And the people were pretty darn disgusted, but they had nowhere to go. But that year, a man came out of California who spoke of a shining city on the hill, and peace through strength, and liberty, American exceptionalism, and the Constitution. And thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, just like you, loved Ronald Reagan's message. And they got all fired up, and they piled into the GOP, thinking we'll join the Republicans, and we'll get them the nomination, and we'll go lead this country out of the mess. And what did the Rockefeller Republicans, the Karl Roves and the John Boehners of the time, what did they think of Ronald Reagan and his supporters, folks? They hated him. They despised him. They slandered him. They dirty tricked him. Ronald Reagan was far too extreme to be elected. Ronald Reagan would destroy the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan was banned from Ohio in 1976 by the Ohio State GOP, folks. They hated him. And they just beat him. They gave the nomination to Gerald Ford, and Ford went up against Jimmy Carter, and Carter won. How did those Carter years work out, guys? Barrel of laughs, were they? Interest rates up to here, gas queues round the corner, gave away the Panama Canal, gutted your military, wrecked your economy, Iranian hostage crisis. Exactly. Second worst ever president, people. You think about it. People were actually saying at the time, in the Carter years, that America would never be great again.
That's right.
It was that bad, folks. But the really important point is this. The grassroots, the hardcore grassroots, they kept inside that GOP, and they took it over at the precinct level, the township committees, and they grabbed it by the throat, folks. And when Reagan ran again in 1980, this time they were ready, and this time they were not going to take no for an answer. This time they forced the GOP to give them their candidate, and they got it. And Reagan went up against Jimmy Carter, and he took him out 48 states to 2. Not bad for an unelectable candidate, right?
Yeah, for an idiot.
Folks, for an idiot, yeah. People, the Iranian hostages were back on the first day.
Yeah.
The interest rates went down. The taxes went down. The economy boomed. He rebuilt your military and he rebuilt the pride in this country. And he took out the Soviet Union without firing a shot. Peace through strength. Any better president in the 20th century?
No.
Anyone even close?
No.
And why did you have a Reagan revolution, folks? Because for once, people just like you got to decide the candidate, folks. Could there be a message for today?
That's right.
Because right now, this country is Jimmy Carter on steroids. And you need Ronald Reagan on meth to turn this around, guys. Not just to go where Reagan did, way beyond Reagan. You've got to gut your federal government and restore your constitution. You know that, folks. I'm giving you both barrels today, folks. I'm fired up and I love this crowd. I will end sometime, though. Look, people, how do you get there? Reagan was a genius. He could unite the social conservatives, the fiscal conservatives, the defence conservatives. He could drag those Reagan Democrats across. The great communicator. But right now, people, your base is very fractured. You've got 1 million libertarians who gave their vote to Gary Johnson last time. You've got social conservatives, fiscal conservatives, defence conservatives, Second Amendment people, anti-Common Core people. You've got Tea Party Republicans. You've got moderate Republicans. You've got 4 million GOPers who didn't even vote last time. And you've got upwards of 30 million evangelical Christians who didn't even register. Think of what they could do to transform this country, both politically and spiritually, if they took on their responsibilities, folks. So, you may not know this, you may not have heard, but there's a bit of division amongst your base. A little bit of argument, fighting, scrapping, you know. Pete might not have touched you here in Florida, I don't know. Being a bit facetious here. But look, seriously, we are 18 months out to the most important election in American history. This will decide the fate of America, folks. Because if you lose the next election, and you have Hillary Clinton or Pocahontas Warren as your next president, they are going to dissolve the southern border, import as many Democrats as they want. They're going to flood hundreds of thousands from the Middle East, and they're going to swamp you forever, folks. You have to win. You have to win this. So this is what I would do. Well, put it this way. Your base is bigger than the Democrats, but the Democrats can bribe every element of it with your money. You cannot bribe your base. You have to inspire your base. And I've seen 2 senior politicians at presidential level in the last 30 years who could inspire the base. One was Reagan and one was Sarah Palin. You seen any more? You know, Reagan understood that most people do not vote with the head, they vote with the heart. He could inspire the people. He could speak, he spoke of a shining city on the hill. Prosperity, a new future, a better America for your children. He didn't just tell you how bad the Democrats were and leave it at that. Karl Rove's strategy. He inspired. How many 60s hippies threw away their tie-dyes and became good, staunch conservatives because of Ronald Reagan, folks? Yeah, a few in the room tonight, I bet you. Okay? So this is what I would do if I was Ted Cruz. And I choose Ted because he has the most inspiration factor that I've seen. This is a man who never backs down, people. This is a man who sets a room alight when he walks on stage. I have never seen anyone as inspiring as him, and I've seen all the main presidential candidates speak several times. So this is what I'd do if I was Ted Cruz. I'd go to all the elements of your base and say something like this. We have to win. This could be our last chance. We have to unify, and this is what we need to do to get everybody on board. The first thing I'm going to do is name my vice presidential candidate right now. It's going to be Alan West. Right now. And then to get you libertarians fired up and voting for us, I'm going to make Rand Paul Secretary of the Treasury, and he can do what he damn well wants to the Federal Reserve and the IRS. Scott Walker, Secretary of Labour. Right to work in every state, people. Sarah Palin, Secretary of Energy. Drill, baby, drill. Drill in your backyard if you want to. $1 a gallon gas for every American family. Mike Lee, Secretary of the Interior. And you know, Pee Wee Herman. Getting to that. And all those federal lands out west that the government thinks they own, guess whose job it's going to be to give them back to their rightful owners, people? Well, Mike Lee, Secretary of the Interior. Michelle Bachmann, Secretary of Commerce. Deregulate, deregulate, deregulate. OSHA gone, EPA gone. Get American businesses working again, people. Then, Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary of Health and Human Services. End the welfare culture in this country. Restore dignity to your communities. Then Secretary of State has to be John Bolton. And his job is going to be to flip the bird to the Ayatollahs and Mr. Putin and to rebuild the Western Alliance. And then, very important, Ambassador to the United Nations. No one. Attorney General Trey Gowdy. Look, I know it's not a problem in your state, folks, but he'll be charged with getting rid of those vote fraudsters, people. Prosecute and jail them. And then for those millions of Christians who don't care about politics, but they do care about the education of their children, they don't want Common Core, they love homeschooling, I would say, Ted Cruz, tell them, vote for me and your millions. We'll make David Barton Secretary of Education. We'll sort that out. Name your entire cabinet, Mr. Cruz. Run as a team across this country. Would you be inspired by a team like that? And would it unify the base? Because everybody's getting something, right? The moderates get something, the Tea Party gets something, the Libertarians get something, the stuff for the Christians. Every conservative gets something out of it. And aren't you all Americans? Don't you all deserve a say in the running of your country? Because right now, folks, every 4 years, the Republicans play their quarterback all alone against the entire offensive team of the liberal media. They put one person up to take it all, folks, and they get ripped to pieces. Why would you play a quarterback against the whole team? Why not play your team against their team?
Good point.
What do you have?
Go tell the GOP.
But look, people, think about this. There's never been, 5 years ago, hardly anybody talked about the Constitution in this country. a few scholars here and there. Since the Tea Party, the 912s, Glenn Beck, Mark Levin, you have educated millions of people in this country on your Constitution, on your Bill of Rights. They know about the separation of powers. They know about what makes America different. That is an army now, folks. I've been to the reddest of the red states and the bluest of the blue. There are millions of people out there now who think like you do. You put that army together with a team of leaders like that, who would stand in your way, folks?
Nobody.
Imagine how it would fire up the base. You imagine, say, Ted Cruz and Alan West campaigning in Nebraska, big mass rallies. Sarah Palin and Rand Paul campaigning in Florida. 2s and 3s campaigning mass rallies across this country. You imagine the union guys who would get fired up to vote Republican just to get their sons and daughters work on the oil fields. You imagine the liberal soccer moms who would vote Republican just to get rid of Common Core. They hate it too, you know. You imagine how you could fire up the base. And there is a precedent for this. Lincoln named his cabinet of opponents. He got all his opponents and put them in his cabinet. There's another very good precedent. Reagan named his cabinet in '76. But there's an even better one. You didn't just have a founding father, guys. You didn't just have George Washington to take on the British. You had a whole team to lead that revolution. Patrick Henry and James Madison, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, Samuel Adams. And they were human. They had their agendas. They had their conflicting egos. But they put them aside for the sake of the revolution and the good of the country, people. And look at what they gave you. Look at the amazing country they gave you. Right now, people, I'm asking you for 18 months more of the hardest political work you have ever done. I know what this cost you. I know the time and money and commitment you put into this. Year after year of hard, thankless work. Time away from your families, your friends. I know the sacrifices you make, and I'm asking for more of it, people. Because the next 18 months is going to decide the fate of not just this country, but my country. Not just your children, but my children. I can't promise you very much, but I can promise you two things. If you do nothing, your children will live in slavery in this land. But if you give it everything you've got, people, everything you've got for your country and your Constitution, the very least I can promise you is the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I could. What is that worth to you, folks? And if you win, and you can win, people, you will give your children not just the amazing country that you inherited, but one even greater. Is that worth fighting for, folks?
That's right.
Thank you very much, folks. So I just want to say to you people, thank you.